Folks, welcome back to So Bad It's Good. Listen, one of the reasons why I love my job is that sometimes you will come across something that you are asked to watch and it really just blows your mind. I think the docuseries format is something that I love so much. And the people over at ID Discovery, I don't know what's happened there in the last couple of years, but it is just getting better and better. And they have a new 5-part docuseries called A Body in the Snow, The Trial of Karen Reed, which I think we are all really fascinated with. And it explores the death, obviously, of the Boston police officer John O'Keefe, whose body was found in the snow on a January morning. And this unpacks this investigation that led to the arrest of his girlfriend, Karen Reed, on charges of murder, the subsequent 2024 trial that ended in a mistrial. That's not a spoiler alert, I think we all know. But what is so fascinating is that this documentarian got boots on the ground. We are in the war room with Karen Reed and her legal dream team. It also handles this case so fairly, focusing on John as well. It is so balanced in such a beautiful way, and I burned through all 5 episodes. So this premieres over 3 nights on Discovery ID, but you can also stream it on our friends over at Max. I am so proud today to have Terry Dunn Meurer with us. Terry, congratulations, first off. I know this is such a sensitive, hard topic, but my God, you hit this out of the park.
Oh, thank you. That was a lovely intro. No, it's been an incredible experience filming with Karen and her defense team. We were invited in to do this by Karen and Alan Jackson, her
Alan
attorney.
Jackson, by the way, is one of her lawyers that you get to see through the beginning right up until his final argument.
Right. Well, this project came to us about 3 weeks before pretrial, and so we heard about it. They came to me and they said they wanted to do what we call a follow doc. They wanted us to follow them, and I said, really? We're really going to get this access and that access. Can we be in the hotel room? Can we be in the car? Can we be in the war room? And they said yes. So we got our crew together and we went and we started filming 3 weeks later. And the access was real. That was one of the people say, well, what surprised you the most about this experience? And I'll say, because the access was real.
They start off each episode with, Karen during the trial, or, you start off every episode with Karen, like, getting ready for the day. I mean, when she says all access, this is all access in a way that I was not expecting at all. And so this footage, to me, I think this is really going to blow a lot of people's minds. But what shocks me is that they were confident enough to say, we want a follow-along documentary. I was expecting that you pitched them on this and they reluctantly agreed.
No, I had heard of the Karen Reed case, but I didn't know a lot of the details. So when I was contacted about it, I did some quick research, and what really caught my eye was how there were 2 really strong sides to this case. And that's something that, is fascinating, that, to be able to, if it was just one-sided, it would have not have been as interesting. But we want in and present a really balanced presentation of the case. And now it's even more important that we do that because there's a second trial, because it ended in a hung jury. Nobody expected, I don't think, that this was going to end in a hung jury. So the second trial is coming up, and it was real important that we be as impartial and balanced as we could in the presentation of both sides of the case. There's 2 sides to the case. There's the prosecution. You don't have a defense without a prosecution, so you have to present both sides.
And I want to assure the audience, both sides are presented. This isn't I didn't walk away going, oh my God, this is a Karen Reed puff piece. This is actually, Terry, I understood that jury being hung at the end, because up until the very end, I just finished watching all of this 2 days ago, and I am still in my mind going back and forth on this. And I know I'm just overly excited right now because this just really took us into the legal process, but also into this case. And there is so much evidence and so much mystery. And then the Karen of it all is that, you don't make a point. We see that she has turned into a local, if not a national celebrity. And as a documentarian covering this, is it hard not to not fall in love with your subject, but when you're getting all access, is there a side? I mean, how do you stay balanced in the side of like, I am not rooting for one side or the other? How do you do that? Because it seemed like you did it.
We just really tried to be objective and go in as unbiased as we could. Our job was to document it. It's the jury's job to decide Karen's guilt or innocence. But what you're talking about in terms of the celebrity, over the 11 weeks that we were there, we saw that celebrity grow. It started off, there was a pretty good crowd of what we call the pinks, the Karen Reed supporters out in front of the courthouse. That crowd just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and people were coming in from different states, from different countries. They just wanted to be a part of that. And we'd film with Karen on the street. Toward the end of the filming, we'd film with her on the street. Invariably, 2-3 people would come up. Oh, Karen Reed, you're Karen Reed, and she is a celebrity in that part of the world. I don't quite know how that's impacted her. In the film, she says it feels good to walk through that crowd of supporters on the way to the courthouse every day.
You guys, I was just at the Oscars 2 weeks ago, and it reminded me of the red carpet of the Oscars where people were like, Karen, you have a shot of her entering her, not, her big car to go out, and somebody's handing her a gift. Like, this is a gift for you. Have a great weekend. And you can see she has personal relationships now with these supporters. And I think if you can divorce yourself from the actual tragedy of John O'Keefe, it is really this interesting study of that pop culture true crime, that intersection that is happening where this is national news. We do watch this on a daily basis, and we do treat these people like pseudo celebrities in a sense.
No, it's really true. There's a scene that's not in the documentary of her in her hotel room with all of these gifts she's been given by so many people. Her room was just
Carrie, I'm
piled.
going to need that scene. I'm going to need, I need,
Well,
is there
that's
going to be
that's one
DVD
of the things.
extras?
That's there's of course there's always footage that you wish you could get in, but there was some just more personal behind the scenes footage that I wish we had time. But there's so much. The trial is so
Yeah.
complicated. But we have Alan Jackson getting his hair cut, and we have Liza Little riding her skateboard down to pick up lunch. We've got David Yannetti working out in the gym. I mean, there's some behind the scenes footage that I'm sure the audience would love to see too, but we just didn't have room for everything. We wanted the, keeping the defense and the prosecution balance. That was really the goal. And having Karen tell her story at the beginning, she says, "This is my testimony," and that's why we were brought in, was for Karen to be able to tell her story about what happened that night, but then also, through her story and her experience through the trial.
It is rare that I see something this balanced, and I just think that's a compliment to you and your team. But there is just so many questions I have in terms of, this is 5 parts, obviously over 3 nights. How, when you get all of this footage, you put all of this work in, how do we start segmenting into sections? We always start an episode with a Karen Reed scene. And then in your mind, where did this story, I mean, obviously we're going to end with the mistrial and what is potentially to come. And we know the beginning, but how do you section this off? Did it start off in your head as a 2-part or even just a big 1-part documentary?
We weren't sure how many parts we had at the beginning. I think we probably, and I never say this, but we probably could have done 8 or 10. There's so much content. You're right. We had the beginning and we had the end, and then we had to figure out how to tell the story of the trial without just always being in the courtroom. So we had to find moments where we could pull the viewers out, give them a break from that. And that's when we would go to a section about John O'Keefe. It was really important for us to have John be a presence in this film, and we tried very hard to have the audience see him for who he was. A really good guy, all reports a good cop, good dad to his sister's kids, and we just wanted him to be a presence in the film. So that was really important. So we created what we call chapters. There was the I hit him chapter, and then there was the
Because you guys,
Chloe,
if you don't follow the Karen Reed story, this is going to walk you through it. Like, even if you do follow it, this is, like I said, it's for both. If you don't know about this case, It is perfect. If you do know about this case, it's all access in a way that I have not seen thus far. We actually see all of the footage kind of in this docuseries.
Right. And then there's the Chloe the dog chapter, and then there's the car data chapter. So we took what we felt were the prosecution's strongest points, and then had the defense team, counter that. And we tried to create a back and forth. And some of it, like the data, is so complicated. There's data that is not included in the docuseries because we couldn't even sort it out. I don't know that the reporters we filmed could sort it out. I don't know that the jury was able to sort it out. A lot of data. Maybe they'll be able to make that clearer in the second trial.
In the second episode, I believe we're introduced to Turtle Boy. And Turtle Boy, I know that sounds like a very weird name, and it is. But Turtle Boy is, I think, a YouTuber, an online person that really took up the cause of Karen Read in a very vocal way. And he is the one that I think rallied all of the supporters, one of the largest voices. And it's such an interesting thing in 2025 how we do have these I don't know what to call them, like these public detectives now. Like they don't necessarily
he calls himself an independent journalist.
Independent journalists that don't necessarily have the pedigree of journalistic standards and things like that. And you can see that he really can rile people up, and he really does. And somebody like Karen really needed this, or needed somebody like this to really garner support. And there is this interesting thing about watching Karen through this docuseries, because you see the certain level of magnetism. And at times it's very interesting where I don't know if she even remembers she's on trial for a potential murder, because this is just her day-to-day life now. But she'll say very boldly, I am not, I know John's parents are there. I'm fine with that. I'm fine. Really standing up for what she believes to be her case, but it can potentially read as cold and callous. And that's why I'm so interested in the discourse that is going to follow in this next week. Are you going to be keeping up with this discourse?
In
terms of what, people's reactions.
People's reaction to the series?
Yeah, I was watching this going certain moments, I think they are going to really go, this is so callous of Karen. It just seems like very unfeeling at times. And then at times, there's a lot of feeling in there.
I think that what you said earlier, actually, if you're in the Free Karen Read camp, the film isn't going to change your mind or make you think any differently about the case. And the same with the other camp. I think if people don't know anything about the case, I hope we've done a clear job of laying it out so that they can experience the back and forth that everybody else has experienced. I don't know what's going to happen next week. It's been very quiet, actually. I was texting with someone last night about how quiet it's been since the trailer came out. Karen and her team have not seen this film. So
that was one of my questions was,
they don't know what's coming. So they probably don't know if they should, support it or not support it. I don't know what they're going to think. I'm more curious about that, honestly, than anything, because they have not seen it.
Yeah, I was expecting them to have seen it by now, but it will be interesting to see that. And I can just already see the Reddit threads already forming right now once this comes out. And what will this do for the case? But there are just so many things that I was reminded of, and I'm so confused, or this actually helped me understand, because there's an argument for everything, and you really get to see the legal process at play. Because, on Jennifer's phone, and Jennifer is one of the ladies at the house, there was a search on her phone at 2:27 a.m., 3.5 hours before John's body was discovered on January 29th. And it literally is like, how's get body out of cold or something like
how long to die in the cold? How long to die in cold?
How long to die in cold? And so if you just take that piece of evidence, I'm like, oh yeah, this is a cover up. This is a cover up if that is to be believed, if that was. But then we have an expert witness later on that we get to see explaining that if you have a browser open and she was in bed browsing basketball scores for her daughter at that time, if you have that browser open, when you use that browser again all of those hours later, if I'm understanding this correctly, it is going to keep that 2 a.m. time as the search. And the prosecution's arguing, yeah, she just potentially was witness or an accessory to murdering a man, but she's in bed looking up basketball scores, but also how long does it take to hide a body in a cold? And I was like, yeah, that's what is so confusing about this. There's an argument for everything.
No, it's really true. That was the cornerstone argument, I think, at the very beginning of this when Turtle Boy jumped on this. But toward the end, as you'll see in the doc series, um, Karen and the defense team kind of start to let the how long to die in the cold issue go. I think that the Celebrite experts who came in were, very, very, very credible and made an impression. So it'll be interesting at the new trial to see how big a deal they make out of the Google search, Jennifer McCabe's Google search, because it feels like it might not be as high profile in the second trial.
Yeah, I mean, it made a lot of sense to me but there was witnesses on the other side saying that no, that is not correct at all. It's a different operating system. So, there's always seems to be an argument. And I was wondering, when you go through something like this, does it change the way you view the legal system at all?
No, I think the legal system is doing the best it can in this particular case. It says that they have their hands full with this one. I mean, the things that people have mentioned to me is, I'm never going to drink and drive.
Yeah,
Not that
by the way, it does seem like there was what we can say is that the Boston police, there seems to be a very, like, drinking and driving seems to be normal. Karen also drinking and driving. That's all admitted to.
Yeah, and nobody's going to text anything they wouldn't want the world to see. I mean, there's some cautionary tales and some lessons to be learned, I think, from the situation in this case, and those are the things that I think about. And every time I open Safari on my phone, I think about this case, and I probably ever always will because of that. I'm like, yeah, oh yeah, I left that tab open, huh?
Oh, yeah, Terry, I look up some of the dumbest searches ever, and I always will say, oh my God, if something happens to me, they're going to look that I looked up some stupid reality show from 1993, and they're like, what was this guy doing? I mean, it really makes you very aware. And that's the other thing, too, is like text messaging between all of these people. And there's a whole episode about butt dialing, is that we have these men, these boys in blue, potentially butt dialing back and forth around the time that is in question in terms of John's death. And that's another confusing element of this. How do we keep butt dialing back and forth in like 23-second increments? That's what's so maddening about this case. And you're able to present all this information, but it is maddening and fascinating the way you present it.
Well, there's this one of the observations we made, I think, is that there was odd things on each side, suspicious behavior on both sides of this case. The butt dials, are one thing. You've got Karen's very angry voicemails to John that night, and you've kind of have the timeline of the case, and the defense will say, well, Karen was framed. I mean, you need to look at the timeline of how that could have happened and when that could have happened. It's just there's so much back and forth, but that's one of the things that makes it such a mystery is, I mean, just the scratches on John's arm. That's a huge, huge part of this story.
And that's where the dog comes
where
into play as
that's where the
well.
dog comes into play. Or was it the taillight? Was his arm torn on the taillight? Those seem to be the two theories for that. But mm,
Uh,
I don't know. I don't
well,
know.
I mean, and listen, I know you can't answer this, but I was like, do you have not a theory, but do you have a belief in who is to blame on this? Like, I mean, not who's to blame, but like, do you have a personal opinion, or are you even allowed to have one?
I've tried and I think I've succeeded in really keeping an open mind about this. I really feel like it's up to the jury to figure out what's the just thing to do in this case. Like you, I just hope that the family and John's family and friends can find the closure and have justice in this case. I don't know what the second trial is going to be different. It's the same evidence, I mean, I think there might be new evidence. I think there's definitely going to be new witnesses. I heard instead of instead of five defense experts, I think there are going to be maybe 10. And Karen's added three attorneys to her team. So now instead of three, she has six. So who's going to do the crosses? It's going to be really, really, really interesting. We have a new prosecutor, Hank Brennan, who's going to present the case in a different way. And then the defense is going to have to see how they're going to change their strategy, because the third party culprit defense, pointing the finger at the people in the house, did not create enough reasonable doubt to have Karen acquitted.
My question too is that watching this, I was like, is this docuseries going to become part of this next trial in any way? I mean, because it presents all of these things. You also have this footage of Karen. I mean, there are ways that you could paint her to be a certain way of this or that. And I was like, I wonder if elements of this docuseries will make its way into this trial in some form down the line.
I don't know. I don't know if they could. I don't know if the defense team could use a piece of it, or if the prosecutor could use a piece of it to make their case. I don't know.
Yeah.
I hope not, I guess. I wouldn't want to feel like this series had any impact on the outcome of the second trial, no matter what that outcome is.
Yeah. Once again, I want to remind people this truly, and I want you to watch this because Fair and Balanced is what this is. I mean, this is a true telling of the story with no fingerprints on it. Like I have never, and that's what I just keep kind of getting blown away. And because sometimes people might go, well, that's boring. No, this is not boring. You are locked in. This is not boring at all. I also want to say, your pedigree, I mean, 530 episodes as a producer on Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack. First off, you're responsible for a lot of my nightmares as a child because my parents let me watch that show. And I was just wondering, in your career, you do all of this, and then you're the director of this. Like, you have this behind the scenes where you're just like, you've done so much. In terms of directing, what led you to directing rather than producing, and how do you view it differently than producing?
Well, so when we were invited to follow Karen and the team, we didn't have time to bring on a director. So I just said, well, I guess I'm going to have to direct this. And my favorite part of that job is doing the interviews. So I conducted all the interviews with everyone, but the rest of the job in terms of directing, as far as I'm concerned, is to not direct. It's to just stand back. We have a great crew. They knew exactly where they wanted to be. They knew how to cover it, what to cover, and they just went for it. And so I just stand in the corner, set the scene and say, okay. But it was really the content that I was interested in, the interview content that was most important. The rest of it was just the crew covering everything we could possibly cover. And I think Unsolved Mysteries, because of, decades of producing Unsolved Mysteries, that definitely set me up for this. This is a
Yeah.
5-part unsolved mystery case when you look at it. And we have a lot of experience. The team, it's not just me. The team has a lot of experience presenting cases like we did for Unsolved Mysteries in a balanced kind of way. I think that's one of the reasons I was brought in to do this project, because of Unsolved Mysteries, and because we do have a good reputation for trying to present cases in a very objective way.
And I do love that with streaming now and ID Discovery and Max, you're able to tell a story over multiple episodes. You don't have to cram something into an hour and a half documentary. You can really tell this story. And sometimes you can see it's egregious and like certain people are like, oh, you didn't need that extra episode. Each one of these episodes you need. Like I was like, oh, this is so specific in the timeline of everything. And another aspect of this case that I found very interesting is that, Karen, was sending flirting text messages with one of John's friends, one of his police buddies. But also there is a voicemail from Karen, like, where are you, you pervert, you this and that. And maybe John had been flirting with people on his street. And it seemed like I think what we might all be able to agree on, that it would seem like a very toxic relationship as well as a relationship that everybody was like, yeah, they're good. But then I think with a lot of relationships behind the scenes, you realize the toxicity of it. And that is another thing that is highlighted. And Karen has to face that of like these text messages where she's like, come over now, and like, when did you start to like me from the jump? What does that mean? This was all included, and so interesting to watch her have to hear these text messages in that room with the jury, with John's parents, with her parents. And it's another element of this story.
Right. The you know, we've heard a lot about John and Karen's relationship. It seems like it might have been winding down. The text that morning before they even went out that night, they had gotten in a big fight that morning, and it was, you could tell that things were not on good terms. But that night at the bar, they look like they're getting along. I don't know, how much of the toxicity, was the alcohol speaking. I don't know, because had both been drinking a lot. Maybe they had had a fight driving from the bar to
And he has
34th.
his glass with him from the bar, which we
Which I
now
guess is
have
just kind
evidence.
of standard operating procedures. You
Oh,
you leave the
I
bar.
was like, you're just
I'm in
allowed to take the
California, and I
glass?
I can't imagine walking out of a
Oh,
bar.
I'm in California. I'd be arrested if I walked out of the bar with,
I know,
and all of these people are just taking their glasses, which turns into key evidence in terms of the broken taillight and the glass. But it really, when this case is as big as it is, you are delving into people's personal lives. And we have a police officer on the stand having to be like, yeah, I'm not proud of that text message, but I did it. And it just shows you life is so messed up, even without this murder, like things are happening in these communities. You don't know what people are going through. The other thing that I didn't really like, what happened to the two kids?
the 2 kids, I believe, are being raised by John's parents.
Okay.
And yeah, that's a tragic part of this story, that they lost their mother, and then a few months later they lose their father, and then they lose John, who's been their father for many, many years and raised them from the time they were very young.
And they were close to
No,
Karen
and
in a
they were
way.
close to Karen, yeah. Yeah, it breaks my heart for those kids to have, at their age, to have had that much loss, in their lives. Yeah, suddenly everybody they've known and loved, obviously their grandparents, but that's a tragic part of the story.
We also have the evidence of, I believe, a microscopic hair was found on the taillight that could, that was John's, or, within a reason, had a very high chance of being John. But if you go with the theory that this was a big conspiracy between police and so many different, teams, then that microscopic hair could have been placed in the garage, like there is reasonable doubt. And that's why it is, at the end of the day, I wasn't surprised it was a hung jury, but at the same time, I'm like, there is reasonable doubt. They really argue. And you see that, like, these high profile attorneys, why they get paid what they do, because my God, this Alan Jackson, you have this amazing footage that I geeked out on of him practicing his closing argument. Karen's in there. The whole team's in there. They've got a timer. They've got a timer on, and he's running through it. And he, I think, runs through the last one with like a minute and a half to spare. And they're saying, my God, you're an orator. This is Abraham Lincoln. This is amazing. Karen looking like, like, wow. And it was so wild. And then compared to the prosecution, who obviously nowhere near as flashy. In fact, you only had an hour for these closing arguments, and the judge has to cut the prosecution off. And then he's like, I just have one more sentence. And it wasn't a strong closing sentence. And you think about the performance element of this all.
Yeah, I think that the prosecutor, Adam, I think he was doing the best he could, but he had this case. He was dealing with this case all himself. I mean, it was all on his shoulders. He Adam had Adam. Adam Lally had Adam Lally. That's all he had. So I think that it was a very, very different and distinct experience, to be on the defense to see the defense team and to watch the prosecutor. Alan Jackson has a lot of experience um, in high profile cases. He called that hair on the back of the car the magic hair. And how did this magic hair stay on the car? I mean, he's an amazing storyteller and an
He's really
amazing, yeah,
charismatic.
really very, very charismatic, really,
Yeah.
really good.
You even have the testimony of the snowplow driver who, finally finalizes what he saw that night, and some people were like, oh, he's been, kind of trained to actually have this answer that he didn't see John's body at all. He was in a snowplow. These lights see everything. He would have seen it. And I love the little piece in there afterwards where they're Alan and Karen, they're like, that guy is great. What a great man. People love, the jury loved that guy. And I thought, well, that is so interesting when you take away this horrific tragedy of John's death. You are out there doing a job, and every day you are out there on that field and like them appreciating somebody else's testimony / performance.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I remember Alan says, no, Lucky isn't going to be able to buy a drink in this town for the next
Yeah.
5 years.
Yeah. I was like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
oh, he's
He
going to have a
loved,
lot
they
of
loved, they
classes.
loved Lucky on the stand. Yeah.
Yeah, but this is why I really recommend this. You get, like I say, I keep saying, this is just access you don't usually get in these trials. And if you have like these like kind of wondering what it's like, I mean, I've never kind of just seen this done in this way. Was Karen paid at all for her participation in this?
No, no, not at all.
Really?
We didn't even buy them dinner. Feel kind of bad about that, but no, 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 maybe a coffee or something, but no, they weren't paid.
That is so amazing to hear. And I'm really that is amazing to hear. What do you when you start editing this thing, do you allow yourself, I do consider this artistry in a way, do you allow yourself to have pride in the overall work? And was there a section where you were like, this is good. This section right here, I love this section.
Yeah, there's a lot about this, the different chapters that we talked about that I really love. I think well, I love the sections about John, especially. Um, and I like it when we're talking about Karen, her demeanor, like you brought up, her demeanor in the courtroom can be read two different ways. I mean, she would say to us, look, I've grieved John. Now I've got to save myself. This is about me saving myself. She's criticized for not being emotional, but then on the other side, she says, look, I can't afford to be emotional. I got to get through this trial. So those are the moments I think that I like, are the most personal, the personal moments.
Well, it also raises this question that, I mean, I think audiences will think about of like, if this was a man going through this trial, how would we view it as opposed to a woman going through this trial? A woman standing up for herself and not backing down. Some people feel very threatened by that. Some people are like, well, that's not right. She's guilty. But like, you have to put yourself in that position of she literally at the very end doesn't know if she's going to have to report to prison that day. Everybody's packing up this war room that they've been in for months and months, and she doesn't know where she's sleeping tonight. And, sometimes when I was watching it, I would even be like, God, she seems flippant in this. There's a callousness here. But then you would have to remember, like, well, this is what she's going through. Like, this is, would I just go, okay, I see that it looks bad. Yeah, I guess put me into prison, even if I didn't do it.
Yeah, Karen's a very different defendant. I mean, if you look around the country and look at trial and watch court TV, she's a very, very different defendant. She's young, she's attractive. She has had the resources to hire a high-powered team, defense team, and I think that sets her apart. People have asked the question, if this were somebody of a different socioeconomic um, position, would they be getting the same attention? Would there be, supporters out there carrying signs throughout the trial? I don't know. I don't know. But the defense had a strategy. The defense pulled in Turtle Boy, and Turtle Boy has stirred up a lot in a lot of ways. Has stirred up a lot of controversy, certainly, and
Yeah.
support for Karen. So they've it's it's that defense team that has also contributed to the atmosphere, I think, at the courthouse.
I'm not saddened, but I guess as we start winding down here, I'm curious. I'm kind of now parsing that you're here and not there. That you're not covering this second trial.
No, we made a decision. Karen brought us in and the team brought us in to tell her story. That's what we wanted to do. And that's what we feel like we've done successfully in these 5 episodes. And to go back again, though certainly the trial is going to be somewhat different, but it would be very repetitive and it would be telling the same story. Karen's story isn't going to change. These are the events that she experienced. And while there's different attorneys and different prosecutor, it's getting different evidence. It's going to be different, but we just felt like it would be repetitive to really go back. I will be watching the trial. I'm very curious now that I know all the players and all the characters. I'm very
Is
anxious
this one
to see.
televised as
Yes,
well?
yeah, it'll be televised again.
It is interesting. Like I said, this pop culture true crime since OJ really exploded things is that, some of these get better ratings than basic cable television. Like this is so like people's curiosity, which is so interesting about our culture as the years pass on. And I was thinking in my head, so if Karen Reed goes free, what's her future look like? I mean, are we in a world where we see Karen Reed in 2026 on Dancing with the Stars? Are we in like where does she go? Because you have this beautiful footage at the end of her coming back to her house after months and, vacuuming and in the garage where we see all the war room boxes. And she says she feels safe and, getting back to this. And I thought it was interesting that she felt safe because I feel like, God, I would feel so not safe, even with all the support. I would feel very not safe, but she says she feels safe. But I was just wondering where her story goes from here. And then obviously, to take it back to John, his family having to go through this again. Those are the questions that I'm left with. And you wonder equally about both.
Well, I think in terms of Karen, I can see a movie in the future. I could see a book in the future. I can see the celebrity continuing to a point, but at some point, I think she's the kind of person that wants to get back to her life or a life.
She's a teacher, right?
She was a professor, an adjunct professor at a university, but she was really a financial analyst. Um, and that was her primary job and source of income. So I don't know if she would go back to that work. I know in talking to her, she said maybe she'd get into law and try and help people, like herself. And in terms of the O'Keefe family, I just think that one way or another, I just think they probably want this to be over. It's whatever happens isn't going to bring John back, but they need to see this through. And the friends need to see it through. So,
and the prosecution said they are going to see this through to the very end. The family and friends want to see this through to the very end. In the last part of the series, one of my favorite talking heads that was John's friend. I'm blanking on his name.
Oh, Brendan.
Brad, I thought he seemed like such a nice, sweet man. And he says at the very end of the day, he just gives this theory of like, listen, I think it was like hit him, broke the glass, taillight, hit the head on the concrete, just a very basic, kind of laid out thing. There wasn't a lot of conspiracy. It was just, and potentially accidental, there was so much alcohol involved on all parties, like everybody. And I just thought that was such an interesting thing at the very end of this man's friend. And it didn't come from a place of anger. It didn't come from a place. It was just very matter of fact. And I think that was such an interesting thing in the end to also then in the same thing with the jury saying it is so unfair for these jurors that have been in here for 18 plus hours to hear Karen Reed supporters yelling and screaming support for Karen Reed as they're trying to decide this case. And that's a mixture of celebrity that, I thought that was just so interesting.
Brendan provided a really great, and John Jackson and Tara, the friends of John, provided a really interesting perspective on that and the trial and what it was like to be on the other side of that. And they talked about the witnesses who couldn't interview because they were going to be testifying, and what they've gone through, and the collateral damage of this case to their lives, and to some of their children's lives, who their children, they weren't even at the house, they weren't even around, and the harassment and that they've experienced. And we really wanted to tell that side of the story too, because that's a real thing. A lot of people's lives have been affected by this trial. So Brendan and John and Tara provided that perspective, which we really, really appreciated. I think that was really important to the film, and also to keep John as a presence in the film.
Yeah. What is next for you? Like, I feel like this is a great relationship with Discovery ID. Are you already working on, like, I talk to a lot of documentarians and they're like, I have 3 things in the works. And, like, are you always working on something? Are you always going?
We're always going. We're developing a few other projects. Unsolved Mysteries is always, I mean, that's my heart. Has been since we created it, I don't know, over 35 years ago. So as many mysteries as we can tell, this Karen Reed being one of them. That's what I love to do, is to find these cases and to bring them to light. So that's the focus of our development for other projects.
Well, you do it, and you do it amazingly well. I know I really severely geeked out on you on this, but I really,
I love
no,
it. I love
I
it.
watch so much television, and this one just had me so much that the last episode, I got screeners in the last episode. I was like 10 minutes from the end, and it started buffering, and I was like, no, 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 because I was so, I knew how it ended. It's like the Titanic, you know how it ends, but I'm just wanting to see this final footage. And I just, this was a masterful piece of work. And what I'm so excited about is to recommend this and to hear people's reactions to this. And then that'll, like, kind of lead into the sequel of Karen Reed. But how do we support you and your work besides, I mean, I'm thinking just watch this, watch it twice, tell your friends, talk about it. But is there any other way that we can support you?
I'm really, like you said, very interested in the feedback that we're going to get when the series launches. No, just watch it. I hope everyone is as enthusiastic about it as you are. I love that you love
I
it
think they
so
will.
much.
I think that, like, sometimes I'm a little, but I think this one I can. Oh, wait, real quick. At the very beginning, you mentioned going with Alan Jackson because he worked in the Kevin Spacey trial. Why was that, like, the first thing you were like, oh, he works in the Kevin Spacey trial. You want to see this lawyer? I think it's in the first episode. I'm just remembering this. And I was wondering why that case was something that would be good for Karen in terms of defense.
I believe that Rick Green, the cell phone expert that found How Long to Die in the Cold, was also a cell phone expert in the Kevin Spacey case.
Gotcha.
That the Kevin Spacey case, there were cell phone cell phones played a big part, I think, in that case. But Alan Jackson's very high profile. He started off as a prosecutor, and now he's a defense attorney. He defended Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey and some big names. Um,
Whew. Well, yeah, guys, 5 parts over 3 nights. You can stream on Max. I blew through these all in one day. I was with my dad, and he was like, what are you watching? I could not stop watching this, and I think you are going to feel the same way. So let's discuss after you guys watch this. Please let us know in the comments, all of this. Terry Dunn Meurer, huge fan of yours, from Unsolved Mysteries now to this. Congratulations. This was just so well done.
oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.